Hey you guys, welcome back to Crime Immemorial. In June of 1984, a young woman would disappear from a street in Stockholm, Sweden, and later turn up butchered, in a crime that would eventually go on to become Sweden's most notorious unsolved murder and the inspiration for Stieg Larsson's internationally best-selling book, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This is the gruesome case of Catrine da Costa. 28-year-old Catrine da Costa, a prostitute and heroin addict, was a regular fixture on the Malmskillnadsgatan, the short stretch of road in the Stockholm city center where sex workers plied their trade. Catrine had been married once before and had a son, but had fallen on hard times. On June 10, 1984, she was seen getting out of a man's car, but thereafter seemed to vanish without a trace. Catrine's mother, who had maintained a very close relationship with her, became extremely concerned when she didn't hear from her daughter, and reported the disappearance to police. There was no sign of her until July 18th, when pieces of her dismembered corpse were discovered in a garbage bag beneath an overpass in Solna, just north of the city center. More parts were recovered a few weeks later, though her head, internal organs, genitalia, and one breast remain missing. Though the victim was identified as Catrine da Costa through her fingerprints, a cause of death was never able to be determined. Shortly after the body was found, a pathologist named Ted Herm came to the attention of investigating authorities. Herm was known to frequent prostitutes and worked at a forensics lab at the Karolinska Institute, a location almost exactly halfway between the sites where the two sets of body parts were found. Not only that, but in 1982, Herm's wife, Catrine, was found hanging in the couple's home. Though the coroner ruled her death a suicide, police suspected Herm may have killed her, particularly because she had filed for divorce shortly before she died, and Herm had reacted with odd detachment to her passing. It was Catherine's father, in fact, who alerted detectives to consider Herm as a person of interest. Further, rather eerily, the pathologist specialized professionally in cases of strangulation and had written several papers on the subject, as well as aided the authorities in other homicide investigations where the victims had been strangled. Notably, a former supervisor of Herm's, named Jovan Brads, was convinced that Herm was the killer and stated as much to investigating officers. A survey of the prostitutes of the Malmskillnadsgatan produced 50 positive identifications of Herm, and one woman even claimed that he had beaten her up during their encounter. A search of Herm's home turned up knives and violent pornography as well. The doctor was then arrested for the murder of Catrine da Costa. Meanwhile, as all of the investigations surrounding Herm went on, another individual was also appearing on the police's radar. This was a former colleague of Herm's, a general practitioner by the name of Thomas Algen. Not long after Catrine da Costa's remains were recovered, Algen's wife Christina was in the process of divorcing him, on the grounds that he had sexually abused their 2-year-old daughter. Though this claim was never conclusively proven, Christina would soon insist that the child made statements indicating that she had witnessed a woman being cut apart by her father and another man who looked like Herm. As Algen and Herm were known to be acquainted, Algen was subsequently arrested also. Arguments presented at the trial of the two men included all of the aforementioned circumstantial evidence, as well as the statements of two owners of a photography shop in Stockholm, who claimed that they had developed a set of photos in the summer of 1984 that appeared to depict a body cut up into pieces. These photos were subsequently picked up, they said, by a pair of men matching the descriptions of Herm and Algen. The doctors were initially convicted of murder in the case, though due to a technicality concerning unauthorized interviews with the media given by some of the jurors, the verdict was soon overturned. A public outcry ensued, and Herm and Algen were later put back on trial. At this second hearing, the men were acquitted of murder, especially as Catrine's cause of death had never been conclusively established, though the judge stated that he believed Herm and Algen were at least guilty of cutting up Catrine's corpse. However, as desecration of a body was not a major offense and held a very brief statute of limitations, the suspects were released. The verdict caused a massive controversy in Sweden, which has never really been satisfactorily resolved. Though the doctors were deemed not guilty of the murder, a large portion of the public were of the opinion that they had gotten away with a horrific crime, and various campaigns by members of the press and others were later able to get both doctors' licenses to practice revoked. Herm attempted suicide in 1985, and in later years, both he and Algen tried to sue the state for defamation and to recover the loss of income that had been incurred by their suspected involvement in the murder. To date, none of their legal actions have been successful, and it remains unknown whether they were in fact guilty of killing Catrine da Costa. Interestingly, there was another suspect who was initially believed to be very promising, though police eventually dismissed him for reasons which are still a bit murky. Polish butcher Stanislaw Ganerka had been in a mental institution since 1974, after having been convicted of strangling and dismembering a woman whose body parts were later found discarded in several garbage bags. Ganerka had only been released from the hospital 3 months before Catrine was murdered, and was also recognized as a regular among the prostitutes of the Malmskillnadsgatan. He was thought, in fact, to have purchased Catrine's services specifically, as his name was found written in her diary. Ganerka died in 1987, and though forensic evidence was obtained from his body in order to try to match it with physical evidence recovered from Catrine's remains, no definitive link could be made, and the case is still officially unsolved. Thank you as always for watching. Remember to like and share if you enjoy this content, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, don't forget to check out crimeimmemorial.com, where I post lots more written content about unsolved murders, as well as updates on solved cases. I'll see you guys again on the next one.